I have
Skaruda language.
I have conned two honks. In fact, I threatened him and then I tried to bribe him, and none of that worked. He's going to give us the part of the Thanksgiving address in his language.
Yet Guarihuatate, Equahewe, Unijak Wafta Kera. Yet Guarihuatate, Ine, Ufne, Unijak Wafta Kera. Yet Guarihuatate, Wiset Disne, Uharuque, Unijak Wafta Kera. Yet Guarihuatate, Awa, Unijak Wafta Kera. Yet Guarihuatate, Urehe, Gehatne, Unijak Wafta Kera. Yet Guarihuatate, Garayuke Hatne. Unijak Wafta Kera. Yet Guarihuatate, Chine, Gehatne, Unijak Wafta Kera. Haniucha.
And a rough translation would be?
The Thanksgiving address, in which, if, for Haudenosaunee people or Okwiyongwe,
This would be a prayer before the
it's
major.
the words spoken before all else. So before we would do anything, we would give thanks to the Creator for all that we could remember as the person who is reciting. And it's actually up to those who are listening to fill in the blanks to anything that is missing. It's all of our obligation. So, and this is to put us on one mind.
Now, we spoke yesterday, or the day before, I lose track of time, about the history of Iroquois in this area. And can you take me back even 500 or 1,000 years and bring us somewhere up close to date? Because you had mentioned several different nations, and I know this area was big in the Powhatan Confederacy. Iroquois is much different.
Well, actually, this area was very big with the Iroquois here, in which, of course, we were not friendly. So the only story is told is about the Algonquins. So being extremely warrior-like, not very tolerant of intrusion, hence the Iroquois, the snakes, the enemies. And of course, that's what all of our names we still bear those names: Nador, Naduis, enemies, snakes. A lot of us down here, quite a few, dating, including the Cherokee, of course, down in the Smoky Mountains, in which we've all continued a relationship for thousands of years at this point. A lot of my people still can speak Skaruda, Salagi, Salagi, and include myself. I speak some Salagi also because I still deal with my relatives, my relations who are the lower part of the Iroquois. So 4 major groups still left down here in the South. The lowest being the Cherokee, and then the Tuscarora, and then the Heron, and then the Nottoway, in which we've kept a relationship for thousands of years, not only with each other, but also with 5 nations for this side of the border, and of course 6 nations, the Grand River. So we've been going back and forth. Highway 95, that's our travel route. Coming from the James River, where the ferry is, going across to Jamestown, Virginia, is the exact point from point A to point B that we traveled and have been recorded traveling, going up north to Council and going up to be with the rest of our relations. So this is not new to us, not new at all.
The newness has to be the recognition.
Definitely.
Yes.
And there are a number of us here. When all had been acculturated, we continued to remain Okwiyongwe people, still speaking our language when it was unheard of to speak native language here in this area because it had been decimated. So, and that's all the way into the early 1900s, which was unheard of because the English had been here since the 1500s.
Well, and you mentioned about the church and the burial grounds around, people buried in the churches
Yeah.
and still in the registers.
Oh, definitely. The street in which I live on is part of the Hampton Institute Agricultural Indian Boarding School, and the chapel at the corner of this street. Oklahoma people are registered all throughout that chapel as teachers, instructors there, and also attending the institute, which is at the other opposite end of the street across the inlet.
And that would now be a Baptist church, did you say?
It's just a historical landmark now.
Okay.
Called Little England. Little England.
I guess an unfair question. We were imposed upon with Catholicism in Roman Catholic from the French. Is there a particular Baptist or Methodist or Catholicism that you were forced to?
It would have started off as just strictly Christianity.
Catholicism, yeah, okay.
Yeah, Catholicism.
Because a brief description of the Hampton project, which I know is probably a sore spot with all, but that's where the Carlisle, Pennsylvania, the whole program, everything, the footprint started right here.
That's correct.
And I mistakenly stumbled upon a marker up near Carlisle, where the woman says, "Oh no, this is the Hampton Roads project." I said, "My daughter lives in Hampton Roads. What have I been doing?" I came down, stumbled upon them, then stumbled upon your flag out in front. It just seems fate plays a huge part of this. But the Hampton program, so that I don't goof it up, can you give us a brief idea of what they were trying to do?
Well, like you said, it was the beginning. It's pre-Carlisle. Kill the Indian and save the man was the phrase. And it, of course, continued all the way to Carlisle. So Samuel Armstrong and Carlisle were very good friends. I guess I would take it in the military. And Samuel Armstrong is still buried in or at the Indian burial site at Hampton Institute, which now is Hampton University.
But this was not a mild process, because I hear rumors there's 183 Indians buried in that Hampton cemetery
Not
to
only
this
that,
day.
most of the native people buried there died very young, and the university tells the story that they died from tuberculosis, but the elders of the children wrote back and said their children didn't die of disease; they died of a broken heart, of being
Right,
away from
non-conforming.
being away from their families.
That's the story I got.
So, but most that attended the Hampton Institute most Native people did very well, actually, and continued to return back to their home. So very few remained, and the program got defunct.
When he passed, Armstrong passed, that program moved to Carlisle,
Right.
and then that's where it all erupted there into it went into insanity.
Correct.
Well, the removal of the children, get the red out and all that program, that's where my mother came into play in the 40s. And, like I was telling you before, she was still a happy soul, but golly, how she ever had that kind of strength.
Well, even that started far before Hampton Institute. It started at the Bradfordton Indian School in Jamestown, which was probably 150 years prior to Hampton Institute. So a lot of my direct ancestors went to the Bradfordton Indian School in Jamestown, Virginia, in which the Bradfordton Indian School is still there. And there's plenty of history and documentation of Oklahoma people traveling back and forth. Actually, a very famous case where the Cherokee and the Nottaways were traveling together, and an accident happened, and one of them got killed, and the town thought they would both go to war against each other, not knowing that they were direct kin.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, the Cherokee and the Nottaway showed up walking through the middle of the town, linked arm in arm, to the people's surprise, because it was an accident. It wasn't intentional,
Right.
and they had no desire to go to war towards each other. So a lot of history of Oklahoma people here, again traveling back and forth, fighting in different wars, the French and Indian Wars, and quite a few well decorated Native people are documented there. So again, that school process, and another interesting story. The people at the school wrote back to the nations, the Oklahoma, the Iroquois, down here, that even after these children being educated and Christianized, they go right back home and go back to their heathenistic ways. Our elders wrote back, and this had to be in the early 1700s, and they told them, the instructors at the school, you all call yourself educating our children, but yet they come back home, they can no longer speak their language, they can no longer hunt and fish. You call this an education. We do not. How about you send us your children, and we will show you what an education is.
Exactly. And teach them to survive.
Right.
Wow. I ran into some markers in Jamestown about shooting the children in the head. Had no idea that even existed in history, but it's well documented when they wanted that portage
Oh yeah.
of the James River.
Oh, definitely. A lot of horrendous history is here that people have no clue about, and just like you said, the Indian burial site at Hampton Institute. All of those young children, just quite a few graves, and quite a few from out west also. A lot of Lakota and Cheyenne and absentee Shawnees attended also.
Well, this is what they started the program with, right? Where they took them from St. Augustine prison
Correct.
to bring them up to get this started.
Yeah, they were non-conformant.
Yeah, to begin with. And it was, I think they say they originally planned to start with you locals, people around here, to gather them, and could not gather people who were interested in such a thing. And there was something about, and I hate to play race against race, but where they were going to make the Indian hate the black man so much that they no longer hated the white man, so they could educate him type thing. That was his theory to start with.
Correct. And
unbelievable.
That did not work.
But how's that possible? Even, I mean, in your wildest dream, if you're going to come up with some wild nightmare.
Did not work whatsoever.
Yeah. How is that possible?
And they got in a lot of trouble for cohabitating
and this
top of that.
And this is like post-Civil War, so public opinion really played a big part in this. When this, everybody else is going, this is a crazy project. And then it continued on into Carlisle even after Armstrong had passed. That was the sad part, but it gave them, it gave the Bureau of Indian Affairs just perfect right to come in and just do more abuse without conscience. And that's where my mother, or my whole nation, ran into it.
Right.
But we got lucky, and we never lost our longhouses, but they moved our reservation 3 times till it came to bloodshed the 3rd time, and this is, we're not moving again. And that's another whole story.
Well, we kept a lot of our reservations all the way into the 1900s, which was unheard of for this area. Again.
And your artifacts?
Oh, sure. Many many. A lot of them sit in the Smithsonian now, even the bones of our ancestors, which because we just got newly federally recognized nations here just this year, last year and this year. So through NAGPRA, the state recognized nations cannot get those ancestry bones back. But now, again, with the so-called new federal recognition,
Right.
so I guess some nations will be able to retrieve their
So
ancestral
it's
bones.
just a constant struggle.
Always a constant struggle.
Dang.
Always.
And this is what I was telling you before. Born and raised and grew up near on the reservation. Thought I knew something about being Indian. I didn't know beans. The more I get into this, or it's taken me over now, but the more I get into it, the more I realize how ignorant even the Indians out here are of each other, because there's no unification of all of them. Should there ever be a unification of just the nations I've discovered that are still up and running, to all the way to Arizona, California, whatever, it would be unstoppable if they even agreed on one thing.
It would be, and I mean that's actually what the Great Law, was about, spreading those white roots, to unite.
Now, if you in any way want, I don't mean to sound too modernistic, but if you want to campaign a website or something for people to follow or anything or look up, you're welcome to.
You can always look at maharonnation.org. You can find a lot of our good history, good solid history on there, on Okweongwe people here, the Lower Iroquois.
Okay. And are you familiar at all with the Lost Turtle Clan up on, it would be the big casino that's up here in the Poconos? We'll get into that later.
Mohegan?
It would be Lost Turtle Clan, and they came from our nation that I know of. And I didn't know if they stretched down this far. They'd be
really.
Iroquois.
I mean, the only, you have Foxwoods, which are Pequots, and you have Mohegan.
Mm-hmm.
Those are.
So the nations that you're familiar with at this point would be the different nations, of course, being the Powhatan, the Herons. Can you name the ones that are around this whole Tidewater area?
Well, the surrounding areas, you had Siouan people here. You had the Saponis, who were Siouan, linguistic background. You had the Anishinaabes or Algonquins here, in which they call the Powhatans, which is a misnomer. Those are actually titles, not the name of the people. But again, and then of course the four Lower Iroquois, Cherokee, the Tuscarora, the Heron, and the Nottoway. So those are you have all three groups here.
My reason for that is that around the world, at least the Europeans and the Orientals that I have answered questions to, believe that we are all just one people that look like Italians in a John Wayne movie.
Well,
they didn't realize that every square inch of this hemisphere was already claimed and being lived in 1,000 years ago.
Not only that, I mean, I've traveled the world. If you go to Europe, all European people don't look alike.
Right, exactly.
Different family groups, of European people. It would have been the same thing here, no different, or any other continent. It would have been the same. We know the Nottoway first recorded here. Were first recorded as mahogany. Some of the Chickahominies were first recorded as copper. Big distinction between, and this is at contact. So big distinction between copper and mahogany. So which tells you that each family group had their distinct characteristics. So not all native people looked exactly alike, and you had, family groups in which they distinctively looked
different, yeah.
Yeah, different.
Because you see, as you get near Alaska, they look quite Oriental. As you get near Mexico, they look quite South American. and a shorter bunch of people. And when I did the Oklahoma with the Oklahoma historian, we went through almost 100 different nations. Some are 7 foot tall, blonde hair, blue eyes. Some are short, tall, black hair. It was everything. And everything you can imagine around the world, there was a nation 1,000 years ago that exactly mimicked somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. It's unbelievable the knowledge you have gained, and that you're actually young enough to do something about it.
Just glad I could be of some type of assistance with the very little knowledge that I do have. So.
Very little knowledge. Yeah, right. Okay. With the advanced knowledge you have. Thank you.
No way.